right, we're here with Harry Siemens of SiemensSays.com. Good morning, Harry.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Yes. Now, a lot of unfortunate news in the hog industry, and today we're talking about farmers who have been incredibly hard hit by specifically Puratone entering creditor protection and now being bought out, but their debts are not being honored. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Let me first back up just a little bit. First of all, the deal that Maple Leaf is in the process of completing with Puratone, is a good thing of a bad situation. I mean, if it wasn't for the moratorium in Manitoba, I never thought I'd say it would be a good thing for the time being. Puratone wouldn't have had the value it has today. Maple Leaf needs those producers, and so what's happening is if you look down the list of all the unsecured creditors, there are a lot of farmers, and I haven't totaled it up completely, but it's in the millions of dollars. I think, first of all, the Bank of Montreal is owed in the $40 million. Then the other Farm Credit is also owed a $40 million. And then there's MACC in Manitoba, about 5 or 6 or 7. That remains about 5 or 6 or 7 million to these individual suppliers, unsecured. And I had a farmer call me last week Saturday, Jamie Hepner of Morden. He says, Harry, how come nobody is talking about the people that are out thousands and thousands of dollars? He, like so many people, had a great winter wheat crop. Mm-hmm. Puratone is continuing to feed 500,000 pigs a year. Well, they needed the wheat. And so he'd been hauling there for many years. And when they asked him to come in with more, he came in with more. But there's a period where farmers aren't getting paid. They went up to September the 12th. And my brother, he got a check just before, I think it was on September the 11th, for his winter wheat. The check was good. Anybody that delivered in that last week to 2 week period, somehow Puratone told them, sorry, we can't pay you. And it's interesting, especially when the creditor monitor took over some bank, and I haven't been able to determine who. They started paying premiums to producers after that because they needed to feed those hogs. So here's one set of producers. One called me from Morden yesterday, Robert Weed, $300,000 that he's owed. And he went on the faith. He said when the feed mill in Winkler, owned by Puratone, needed feed, whether it was Sunday morning, Sunday night, or Saturday night, he could always deliver. That's the kind of relationship he had. So when he talked, and he tells me this on tape, when he talked to the creditor monitor of this situation, they told him, oh yes, keep delivering, you'll be paid. Well, he's out $300,000. Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, realistically, what recourse do they have? When typically when a company goes bankrupt or enters receivership or whatever, then you've got, farmers may receive or creditors may receive cents on the dollar or whatever the case may be and get a portion of what's owed. But realistically, now that they've been bought, how does that actually work? Or if this deal goes through, I suppose.
Well, basically, Doug Chorney, president of Keystone Agriculture Producers, he's working on this situation. I understand there's a meeting today or tomorrow that involves Puratone, Maple Leaf representatives, and some of these producers, just to see if there isn't something, because those producers that have been hauling to Puratone, whether Maple Leaf or Donald Trump owns them, they will never deliver another bushel unless there's some good faith that now comes from Maple Leaf. That's the sad part, and I believe that Maple Leaf is in a position where they need all the help that they can get in order to get that plant or keep that plant full of hogs in Brandon. I believe that's the only recourse that they have at this point.
Now, it's very unfortunate. It's also not the first time something like this has happened. How do we then, there are certainly ways that farmers are protected through the Canadian Grain Commission, through the bonding system. There's obviously changes coming in that. Why are feed mills not part of that system?
Doug Chorney told me that he says here, this is the typical situation where producers think they are protected in some way, shape, or form. But that doesn't mean that the onus is on somebody else. The onus is on them to find out whether they are protected. So they're looking at some kind of a private insurance scheme, whatever that may mean, moving forward. Keystone is working on that. Some other people are working on that to make sure, because Doug told me about a cattle broker that went broke last year that left a lot of cattle producers out in the cold. And you know it, I know it. When somebody goes bankrupt, that's just the way things happen. There isn't much recourse unless there's enough money to go around. In this case, I find it just a little bit different, because when you're up to a certain date, you got paid. Then there's a no man's time where they didn't get paid. And then along comes somebody and says, well, we need your grain. We're going to pay you a premium. That, to me, is where the real difference comes in.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And I think it is one of those things that farmers definitely, if they're not aware of, these are the questions they have to ask as to what sort of, how they might be protected. Absolutely. And, perhaps we need some significant changes to that payment security, because these things unfortunately happen far more than we'd like them to happen. That's for certain.
Well, we know that with the Canadian Wheat Board gone, as far as the monopoly is concerned, there's a certain amount of risk that was involved in that. And, it's now, people are dealing in a completely different way in some of these areas. So they have to really start to figure out, is there due diligence? Do I have to do my own due diligence? It's probably coming to that. And if you aren't sure of where your grain is going, whether you get paid, you better get the certified check before you dump that grain. I mean, there's just a few things that farmers will have to do, especially this year. I mean, this farmer, Robert Weeb, he said 2 years, bad years he'd had. Finally, he'd had a real good year. Corn, of course, did very well. So he says, I will survive, but only because of a corn crop that was exceptional.
Right. But, really, that. Thankfully that he's got that cushion to keep them afloat, but he's owed $300,000. The average person doesn't make that in 3 years, so it's not okay to say that yes, he's going to be okay because he got a good corn crop and good prices. He's owed this money, and there needs to be some way to ensure these things don't happen. And so you're right. It might be that farmers need to start demanding some sort of either a certified check or payment up front, or at least in part, perhaps. But I think that this is a really good kick in the pants to say that farmers need to demand better payment security from different grain buyers that maybe aren't covered under the Canadian Grain Commission.
You're absolutely right, and I think that's probably going to happen. People will absolutely be much more cautious in doing business with feed mills, and there aren't a lot left.
No. Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, Harry, as always, this has been very insightful, and we will talk again soon.
Take care.